Okay, so today we are on 5.4, forgetting. The objective for today is students will be able to describe strategies for memory improvement and typical memory errors. Motivating forgetting is just the idea that memory is unreliable. And the reason being, if we take a look over to the right here, so when we have our sensory memory, it's actually really good, right? We have memorized, we have all this memory. It has amazing detail. You can understand every sensation. However, once we start to move that into working memory, you start to see some of those memories disappear, right? So right now, if you were to pay attention to all of your senses, you could register all of them and you could tell me if you're hot, you're cold, what you smell, what you see. But then as you move things into working memory, you do have to start to figure out what you're going to encode and what you aren't. So there's a few items that might stand up, and those are going to be the ones that are encoded. But that doesn't even mean long-term. It just means working or short-term memory. So once we move things into our long-term memory, we know that some items get altered or lost, meaning that we may have that memory, but that memory may not be perfect, or we may have forgotten where we stored it. And then the last part of it is when we actually go to retrieve that memory, depending on things like interference, retrieval cues, moods, motives, some things get recovered and some things don't. So we started off all the way up here and then you jump all the way down and you see we only have a small item of numbers that we actually remember. So it's just that our memory isn't super reliable. Another way of looking at motivated forgetting would be repressed memories through Freud. And Freud believed that we had the ability to repress unwanted memories. Now, most people today don't agree with that. Most people today believe that we want to forget. But the memory is still there. And we're going to talk a little bit more about repression in a moment here. The misinformation effect. The misinformation effect was discovered or produced by Elizabeth Loftus. And the misinformation effect is that after exposure to subtle misinformation, many people will misremember. So if you get misinformation, you are going to misremember that information. So a perfect example here is leading questions. If you witness a car accident and you're asked two different questions, one, how fast the cars were going when they smashed into each other, you are going to envision a much more severe accident than what actually occurred. Versus if you were to ask, like, at what speed were the cars traveling? So this would be a non-leading question. Okay, so the leading questions are misinformation. And because of that misinformation, it's going to cause you to misremember it. We see this happening a lot, or we used to see this happening a lot when people were interviewed by police officers, and now police officers are trained in how to ensure they're not asking leading questions, because those do not hold up in court. Source amnesia, also known as source misattribution, is that we have the memory, don't know where it came from, right? Source is the weakest part of our memory. So sometimes it's hard to determine, did you read it or listen to it? We just aren't always sure where we got that information from. Memories of abuse. Now, this is really tricky. So we're going to go into a couple different things here. First, when it comes to children, And when children are asked about eyewitness, or for them to tell what, for them to tell what happened, and this can be an abuse, but it can also be in any real case where they have to share information. Children's memories are highly suggestible, meaning that any type of leading question can lead to misinformation. So questioning with children, it has to be very, very specific. One example is 58% of preschoolers falsely identified a memory when tested. And the kids are really passionate about it. They'll say, no, I remember this happening. And maybe they read about it, maybe they saw it on TV, but they think that it happened, or their memory is telling them that it happened to them. And so with children, it has to be very, those memories have to be very protected, and be very cautious on the way that you question any child on an event. Repressed memories. So I told you we're going to come back to this. Remember, this is Freud's thing. Freud had this idea of repressed memories, but it's very questionable now. Now, we do know abuse happens. We do know abuse is extremely traumatic. We do know that people can forget things, right? Everybody forgets from time to time. However, the reason why forgetting happens with sexual abuse is for two things. One, they could have been very young when it happened. Or two, they didn't fully understand what was happening to them. So they didn't realize to what extent the trauma was at the time, and so that might be why the forgetting happened. We also know that you recover memories, right? Because forgetting is common, we do forget things, so we do recover them. The idea being is that this doesn't mean that they were repressed. Memories before age 3 are completely unreliable. It's because your brain is not fully developed. Memories, if there's any memory that was recovered under drugs or hypnosis, are unreliable because they're so suggestible if you are under hypnosis or some type of a drug. And memories, even if they are true or false, are still is equally upsetting. So even if the memory is not accurate, if they believe it is and they think that that's what happened, it's still going to be extremely emotionally upsetting for them. So what can we do to improve our memory? Well, we can study repeatedly. So this is where we talk about our distribution, not mass, right? Where you study repeatedly over a couple of days' time. Make the meaning meaningful. Can you make some sort of a connection? Activate retrieval cues if you can. Things like same time, location. Use mnemonic devices. Roy G. Biv. Minimize interference. This is a big one, you guys. So this is stay off the phone. And no music. Many of you like to listen to music, but when you're trying to study or you're trying to store this information to long term, do not listen to the music. Sleep more. 9 hours. And test your own knowledge. Quiz yourself. And that's how you can improve your memory.